USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This week, we turn our eyes to the NCHC and somebody who spends a lot of time covering it.
And joining us now on USCHO Spotlight, a great friend of the show and of college hockey in general, Dave Starman from CBS Sports Network. Star, the NCHC, I know that is your beloved league nowadays, and I look at this league and what a grind this has been all season, and now we're getting down to the final couple of weeks. Lot still to play for in this league.
There is, because it's getting interesting now, because teams obviously jockeying for home ice, and that's certainly a key component. The one thing that this league has shown is you can't pull it upset. They haven't had an 8-1 upset since year one, I believe, when Miami went to St. Cloud and knocked them off. And unfortunately, St. Cloud, I think, has been on the bad side of a bunch of big upsets. That was one of them. And the 4-5 matchup basically is two teams that, I mean, you can put them on the moon. It doesn't matter. They're going to be equal. So, I mean, that's a good one, too. So then you get into the ones that kind of matter, which is like the 2-7 and the 3-6. So right now, if you're St. Cloud State, you're sitting in the 2-hole, you get Duluth. Like, have fun with that. And if you're Denver right now, you're sitting in the 3 spot, you're going to get Omaha. And good luck with that. I mean, like, Omaha's pretty good too. So, like, I think that there's so much to play for over these last 4 games, including the race up at the top, where North Dakota's got basically a 1-game lead over St. Cloud State, a 3-point lead with 4 games to go.
Well, let's start at the top then. In North Dakota, this is a team that I think everybody saw them chugging along, and there seems to be one kryptonite for them, and it is Colorado College. 2 weeks ago, going down to Colorado Springs, getting swept, and not just getting swept, but 2 lopsided-ish scores. Maybe surprised a lot of people, but then they come back and then win their series last weekend. And I think that probably, as I called it, I think on Monday was the get-right series. All that said, a 1-game lead, do you feel like they're in a pretty secure position right now?
I do, and that's what I've watched all 4 of the games between North Dakota and CC. And there are a couple of games where CC was just flat out better, but I will tell you that the Saturday night game between Nodak and CC recently, take the score out of it, North Dakota was pretty good in the game. They just couldn't score, and Iberico is a big reason why. So do I worry about North Dakota moving forward? If you're going to have a concern, it's the fact that they've got 8 defensemen on there that are all basically in their first season with Nodak. But I will tell you that they've got some kids that are playing like veterans. They've got some younger kids who are playing like men. They've got a really dynamic offense, and they've got a pretty good back end too. And you know, the one thing about North Dakota is they can score. Jackson Blake can score. Cameron Berg can score. McLaughlin can score. Gaber can score from anywhere. He can score with his eyes closed. So you got a good group there. And you know, on their defense between Garrett Pike and Jake Livanovich, you're getting some really solid play too. Logan Britt's been real good for him. And the goaltender, Ludwig Persson, has been tremendous. Like, he just kind of had a hiccup at CC, but he's been great. So when you look at North Dakota, you see a team that can really skate. You see a team with a ton of offensive skill. You see a team that's been lights out in goal for just about every game this year. And you see a team that's got a little swagger to it. And you're right, Jim, the series against UMD was the get-right series, but they weren't so wrong going into it that I think some of the concerns among their fan base, which is an awesome fan base, but I think some of the concerns in the fan base were a little off the mark considering what this team has done all year.
I want to look at the next 4 teams, and these are all teams that currently are inside the pairwise bubble. St. Cloud, Denver, Colorado College, a great surprise this year. Maybe not to anybody that follows their program and, a great coach, but they've gotten inside the bubble in Western Michigan. These teams are obviously the top 5 right now when you throw North Dakota in there in this league. But, is there a lot of separation when you look at the 4 teams I just mentioned, throw North Dakota in there 5? I mean, it feels like all 5 of them are pretty close.
Well, we're going to get a really good indication on Friday night and Saturday night when Western Michigan plays North Dakota for the first time, basically in a year. And we've got that game Friday night on CBS Sports Network. And I can't wait for that because I thought Western was pretty good last Friday night at St. Cloud. And this should be a really good one because Western is old, heavy, fast, and they don't fool around. Like they're not the prettiest team in the world to watch, but they do have a lot of skill. And this bump kid's off the charts. But they play a style that puts teams on their heels and can pin their ears back pretty quick. And North Dakota is one of those teams that hasn't had that happen to them a lot. So I really look forward to that. Is there a big separation between Western and North Dakota? I'm going to say the answer is no. I think Western's going to get its power play scoring again like it did earlier in the year. But to me, is there a huge difference between those two teams and their ability to break a game open and extend the lead? Not a ton, no. Let's go to St. Cloud State. St. Cloud is in the number 2 spot right now. And the thing I like about St. Cloud is they've got some balance. Now, sometimes balance could be a euphemism for we need everybody to score because our top guys aren't very good. That's not really the case here. Like St. Cloud's top guys are pretty good, and the depth of their lineup's really good. Kyla Kupka's been pretty steady throughout the course of the year up front. He's a fifth-year guy. Another fifth-year guy is Dylan Anhorn. And people were worried about Anhorn as a defenseman because remember, he missed a good chunk of time with a bad injury. And when he came back this year, he looked like he was out of shape. He looked like he had no explosion to him. And now he looks like a pro. So he's got that figured out. And then, you get the Mietin brothers are pretty dynamic. Mason Sahlquist has been really good in the circle. And Zach Okabe is scoring again. And that was a big concern early on in the year. So to me, I think St. Cloud State's the kind of team that can push the pace. And believe it or not, as a big rink, Olympic-sized rink team, they're actually better on regulation sheets. So I think that's going to help out once again the national tournament. Then you go to Denver. Now, Denver's a good one because obviously Denver's that team that can score like crazy, right? They lead the country in goals. There's nobody within, 25 goals of them, I think, in terms of overall scoring. And then it slowed down a little bit recently. And this is where it kind of gets funny. Denver, I think, is either the youngest or the second youngest team in the NCAA, and BC is right there with them. And I'm at BC a couple of weeks ago before I saw you doing that PWHL game. And I spent the afternoon with some of the coaches, and they said, how's Denver doing? I said, they've slowed down just a little bit. And I think it's their youth. And Greg Brown looks at me and goes, great. He goes, we're as young as they are. And I'm like, yeah, but you've got half the world junior team. There's a big difference here. I think you're set when it comes to the skill level component, having played in big games. But Denver's going to score. I think they're going to continue to score. Even when scoring starts to get harder late in the season, I think they're going to figure out a way to get goals. To me, Denver's issue is going to be, can their goaltending be steady enough to get them through behind a lot of youth, especially on the back end. They've been pretty good defensively. Zeev Boehm, to me, is the reincarnated Brian Leach. And he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NHL draft, as we all know. But Denver, I think, has got a lot of skill. The wild card for them is, does their youth hold up through the grind, and will they be able to handle that? And then the last team that we talked about on the list is Colorado College. They're balanced. Like, they're good down the middle. They're pretty good on the back end. They keep pucks out of their net, and Barrico has been tremendous. I mean, he has been lights out good. I don't want to say he's the comeback story of the year because, he wasn't bad last year, but to me, as a goalie, watching what he has done over the last year has been remarkable, and what he has become as a netminder. Let's make the baseline the World Junior Tournament where I thought he was okay. He's now really, really good, and they can score. Lava can score. Babayev can score. Beck can score. These can move the puck. They've got some experience, and they're really well coached. So that's kind of the NCAA top 5 in a nutshell. And to me, is there a lot of separation between these teams? Not really. They just all have a different dynamic or a different dimensional quality that sets them in the right direction.
Dave, since you mentioned Caden and Barrico, I wanted to touch on goalies in the league. If anybody looked at stats just in conference, they'd see Caden Mbereko, the only Richter nominee from the NCHC with a .930 save percentage in conference games, and everybody else .906 or below with several sub .900. Meanwhile, you have the Big Ten with 4 Richter nominees and a lot of goalies putting up some big numbers. What's the difference in the NCHC? Is it skill up front in scoring? Is it something with goaltending this year? What's the story there?
Yeah, this is going to make me really popular when I answer this question, but I'm gonna lead with a quote that Chris Mayotte head coach at CC, and, as you know, former assistant coach at Michigan, gave me a couple of years ago, and I thought he was the right guy to do it because he was in the Big Ten and is now in the NCHC. He said the NCHC probably has better teams, whereas the Big Ten probably has more high-end players. So maybe the skill level top to bottom in the Big Ten is better, but the teams in the NCHC are better. Well, when you have better teams, you got a chance to have more consistency and more repeatability. And in the NCHC, these teams really attack the net, but they attack the net with some depth and with some fury and with some heaviness. So there's a lot of congestion that goes in front of the net. So to me, I think with the Big Ten, there's a lot more puck possession in that conference because of the higher end guys, just in my opinion. So I'm not quite sure that the goalies are getting the same, or the majority of the goalies are getting the same work, because there are some goalies on some of these teams that defend with the puck on their stick that might not be getting the same looks in terms of grade A chances against that some of the NCHC guys are getting. It's just kind of my theory, but it's something I see. Now, that being said, I think the NCHC goaltending this year is not what it has been in recent years. Don't get me wrong. But Person in North Dakota has been really, really good. And Barrico, Colorado College has been really good. Cam Rowe in Western Michigan, under the radar, has been dynamite. Like, he has played every game, and he has held Western Michigan in a good chunk of them. Now, he's not getting 30 shots a night. He's only getting about 25, but he's made some 10-bellers this year that have helped Western Michigan win some games. The kid Lakotsi in Omaha, skill-wise, might be the best goalie in the conference. Like, he is lights out great. He's just playing on a team that is not as thick depth-wise as some others, so he's getting probably a few more grade A's against him than he normally does. The loose goaltending's a little bit down this year. State School's been okay, but he probably hasn't been the dominant guy they want him to be. And Miami's goalies have been under siege most of the year. So I think the reason that they only have one Richter Award finalist is because there's more parity among the goalies in the NCHC, where in the Big Ten, I think you're seeing some of the bigger names that are out there.
More with Dave Starman in a moment. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th, 2024 at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Where are my hockey fans at? Present. Welcome to Fandom 101. It's NCAA Ice Hockey Championship time, when the hottest teams in the country face off under one roof. Be there to see your squad hoist the ultimate trophy overhead. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th in St. Paul, Minnesota. Attendance is encouraged. Passion is mandatory. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/mfrozenfour. Class dismissed.
We're back with USCHO Spotlight and Dave Starman. We still have this season to finish up, but next year, a program that we've watched to go from club to a community rink to a beautiful jewel of an arena, and now the NCHC is Arizona State. 9 teams and 3 scheduling pods next year. What do you see as maybe something that stirs the pot a little bit, bringing in Arizona State, and how does that impact the NCHC next season?
Well, I'm going to start with the personal impact, and that is game prep, watching video at the pool with the margarita is going to be phenomenal when we do those games at Mullet. So, like, count me in as a huge fan. As a matter of fact, I said that I think, we normally try to do 1 game in every building for the 8 regular season games. I said, the hell with that. Let's do 8 games in Arizona State, and let's just have everybody go there once, and we'll just move there for the season. Like, I think this is phenomenal. But to me, I think one of the first things, and I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but after their gong show with Alaska last week, I think they need to understand that that's not what happens in the NCHC. Like, that's just not going to work there. And I think they're going to come in, and I think they're going to get their toes wet a little bit in the first couple of years as they see, what they're up against consistently with some of the really, really strong teams in college hockey, into a conference that at the moment has won 5 of the last 7 national titles, right? So, I mean, like, I think there's a chance that they get their ears pinned back a little bit in years 1 and 2. But I like Greg Powers as a coach. I think they've got a great building to recruit to. I think they've got a great market to recruit to. And being that they're going to be in the NCHC, I think that's going to really help their recruiting, because some of those players that might have been on the fence about playing independent or not, despite the fact that it is Arizona State, think that, 20-something games within the NCHC, if they want to be pros, that's a good place to play.
Yeah, and Greg Powers said he wouldn't have been able to build the staff he has now if it wasn't for going to the NCHC and recruiting kids to that league.
100%. Like I think it's an honor to play in Hockey East. I think it's an honor to play in the Big Ten. I think it's an honor to play in the NCHC. It's an honor to play in any of these conferences. We all know that. But if you want to be in the footprint of where a lot of NHL eyeballs are, the NCHC is a good conference to do it in because the amount of players that's been drafted and those odd high end guys that come in as draft eligible. So that's one of the things that I think kind of the big three share is the fact that you're constantly playing against guys that are going to be playing at the highest level. And that's where a lot of the NHL eyeballs are watching.
The fight up at Alaska, both coaches came out very strongly against what happened, suspended their players involved in the one-on-one fight for the rest of the year. Is this just another blip that comes along? You hear fans saying, oh, we need fighting back. We need fighting in college hockey. You talk to coaches around the NCAA hockey, that's the last thing they want. Is this something that we have to worry about, or is this just a blip?
I don't even think it's big enough to be a blip, to be honest. I think this is just one of those things. I will tell you this. I think if those teams were both in a conference, that would not have happened. I think just when you're an independent, there's probably a little less accountability in that area than there would be if you were playing conference play because the impact would be a little higher. But I don't think we need fighting in college hockey. I think anybody who's saying that's ridiculous. And the 70s and the 80s were fun, but they're over. And, for many of us in a lot of ways. And I think that as we move forward with the game, like, here's the thing, I'm doing a lot of PWHL stuff now. So I'm in college hockey and PWHL hockey. The games are really, really physical. There's no fighting. It's hockey in a more pure sense in a lot of ways. And I really like the way that the game looks. And I don't think we need fighting at all. Like, I'm seeing a little bit of an uptick in fighting coverage here in New York because of what's going on with the Rangers right now and the kid that's come up and beating out at everybody. But like, I don't think we need that. And I don't think that that's going to drive the engine when it comes to this game being more popular. I think we're so far past the fighting and it's really not needed anymore.
Dave, before we let you go, I want to pose a question to you. You've been around this game, I think longer than I have. So I guess you're more qualified even than I am to think about this, but the CHL, a lot has been going on with the talk about maybe allowing CHL players after they play some time up in Major Junior to come into the NCAA. Hear a lot of coaches say it doesn't make sense. We've won a war against that battle. A lot of coaches say, hey, we need to expand the player pool. Where do you think it is the right place? You're more sensible than a lot of people in college hockey at this point. Where do you see this falling?
I think it's a really complex issue that along the lines for college hockey will go the way that many of the big items that have come up in Naples at the convention over the years have gone. You're going to have 20 schools that are going to be banded together thinking it's one way, and you're going to have 40 thinking we need to go the other way. And it comes down a lot to the haves and the have-nots. And like, a lot of coaches have made some good points about, if the CHL was an option, do you want to go play at, I don't want to pick on any school. Do you want to go play at a school that's got lesser status, or do you want to go play for the London Knights where, it's terrific? Like, if you can do one or the other, what are you going to do, right? So you're getting that comment. You're getting coaches saying, well, if the CHL is a possibility and some of those players jump to that league for a year, then we'll never see them in college hockey. So, there's been a lot of different things. Like, me personally, I think if you took a look at taking the USHL and the three leagues that comprise the CHL, because let's be honest about it, the USHL is like Major Junior without the $50 a week stipend, right? I mean, it's the same league. And in some cases, you could say it's as good. So let's put it right on the table and call a spade a spade. If you took those four leagues and declared them all as amateur leagues and came up with something along the lines of you can't go play college hockey until you're 19, and you took the draft and you made it 19, so now you got guys playing junior through their 19, then going to college, you might have a system that can work a little bit better, but you're probably going to have to expand the NCAA Division I pool because now you're going to have a boatload of players looking for places to play, and you're going to have room for more programs. So I think it's kind of program dependent too, in a way, because if we start recruiting out of the CHL and we start bringing those guys in, then you're going to start bouncing. First of all, I think you're going to start bouncing out a lot of the U.S.-born players, which is going to be a problem. And number two is you're going to have probably more inventory than warehousing, and that might cause some issues along the development path as well. So I almost think like right now we're in pretty good shape, but to be fair, like if you're a 16-year-old kid and you decide you're going to go play in Moose Jaw, and by the time you're 18, you realize that was a total disaster and you'd rather go play for Omaha, like the university I'm talking, you probably should be allowed to, because at 16, I mean, you can figure out what socks you want to wear, let alone where you want to play the rest of your hockey career. So like, maybe it's time to think along those lines that some of these kids got steered into a bad decision, which they should be allowed to get out of.
Is that another issue, that you have to make too many decisions as youth at too young of an age?
I will tell you this, Jimmy, I do. Now, there are some players where the decisions kind of get made for them because of how good they are, right? Those top 5% kids in a birth year. I am so thrilled to death that Ryan Starman is not in the upper 5% of the 05 birth year. Like, so I never had to deal with any of that nonsense. But I see it with some of the kids he's played with. And, you know, I see it at the USHL. I see it with the North American League level, like tier 2 versus tier 3 junior, where to play Division 1 versus playing. Now, most US born kids that I'm around, their goal is to play in the NCAA. Major junior was never a consideration. So I have a little bit of a different take on it. But like me personally, I think the college path towards the next level of whatever hockey you want to play is the best all-around path that you could possibly take, by opinion, and I've been around it longer. But again, remember, I was a NCAA scout for 11 years. So, I mean, I saw some crossover games at the CHL level versus the hundreds of games I saw at the NCAA level. And I really think that the NCAA does a tremendous job at playing a pure game that really develops players to play at the next level, plus the ability to coach older players that become men as they're still playing amateur, sets them up for more success down the road.
Well, I don't think you have an unpopular opinion there. I think that there's probably a bias, and I'd say a majority bias toward what you're saying, but it's a long road still to go with that. But listen, we always appreciate not just that input, but obviously everything you tell us on the NCHC when we get the chance to talk to you. So we appreciate your input. I think it's going to be a fantastic last 2 weeks of the regular season and then the playoffs in the NCHC. So Dave Starman, I know you get to call it all and be there for it all. I hope you can get to enjoy all these games along the way.
I'll tell you something, Jimmy, after, this is my 21st year and I do miss seeing every conference. There's no question. I really miss Hockey East. I really miss the ECAC. I loved when we did a lot of stuff in Atlantic. I mean, that was always fun. And obviously there's some new conferences going on. And I haven't really done a lot of Big Ten as much as I used to. And, the CCHA I just don't get to see anymore. But that was so much fun. At 55 years old, I got to tell you, I'm not quite sure I have the mental capacity for 6 conferences anymore. So the fact that I only see one probably goes a long way towards me being able to do this year after year, because I couldn't even begin to imagine trying to figure out 6 conferences at this point when, like I said, there are days I can't figure out where I put my keys 20 minutes ago.
Well, I know that Ed is on the other side of you. I'm just below you in age. We're all in that same boat right now. We can't figure out where our car keys are. So to finding our car keys tomorrow, that'll be the only mission that we have to go for.
Here's the thing. We all still do it because we love it, right? So we'll all keep doing it. As long as they keep asking us to be a part of it, we'll all smile and say, thank you very much for letting us continue to be a part of college hockey, because to me, it is more fun than anything. So you guys keep doing what you're doing too. We love the podcast.
Thank you. And we will see you in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
That's the always knowledgeable and always opinionated Dave Starman. Jim, I was really interested in the comments Dave had about the CHL. He really made the point that we already don't have enough Division I teams for the talent that's out there. And I like the term more inventory than warehousing, and that it could also mean bumping some U.S. players from college teams if there was CHL eligibility. I want to look at that part of it first, and then maybe about the player who may have made a wrong decision along the way. But first, about not having enough spots. I mean, that's a pretty compelling argument right there.
No doubt. Do we need 80 teams? Yes. I've said this for a while now, that I feel like we could use more teams. There's plenty of need. There's a supply and demand issue right now. We need to have more players finding spots on Division I rosters. It's just not there. 64 teams. Even at 64, and don't forget, 64 has massively expanded in the last 5-6 years. We were, down in the 60s, below 60. So we've seen the expansion of this game. It needs to go further if you're going to suddenly just drop what could be another 200 or so potential players in the NCAA talent pool. And I know that coaches want this. And, you say to a coach, well, if you're at a lower tier school, why do you want to have more players coming in? They're all just still going to go to the top tier schools. That's true. But does that push the third line player from Michigan down to play at maybe Michigan Tech or, someplace in Atlantic hockey? Maybe. And I get those schools, those coaches want more access to more players. I don't know that our current structure, I shouldn't use our, I don't know that the current structure of the NCAA is ready for this. That is one of the biggest, I think, hurdles that really faces all 64 teams and the NCAA as an institution. Are they ready to figure out the way that you allow a league with NHL players under NHL contract to be playing and then possibly going back to college? I don't know that is set up. There's a lot that has to get figured out. Everybody says it's one lawsuit away. Yeah, maybe it is. But those lawsuits are out there. And I still say this is 3 to 5 years away minimally. Will it happen at some point? I think absolutely. You'll eventually have to see the CHL players allowed in. There's just too much that we have done on the NCAA side we've seen between NIL and just everything we've done to kind of, give the players more of a voice and more power, that you can't turn away players that, they've lost their amateur status because they take $50 a week and they take some money that's guaranteed to them at the end for education. That's not fair probably. But I don't think that we're ready for it right now. The NCAA Division I men's game is not ready for this right now.
I suppose there's a way it could be worked out that if you're not under NHL contract, that you're free to move, or maybe you use up some eligibility along the way. Those are the kind of things that can be sorted out along the way with all that. I think one thing that Dave said, I know he was just kind of using some round numbers to make a point, sounding like, well, they're going to be 20 over here on one side and 40 over here on another side. That's really not too far off from what we've heard. And really with the 40 or probably a few more being against it at this point.
I think he was pretty much spot on. I think it's probably is 2/3, 1/3 right now. The larger leagues don't want this. They feel like there's been a battle that has been ongoing against the CHL for so long, and that has been something that through the great efforts of College Hockey Inc. have really been combated to allow Canadian players to understand what they have to do to maintain their NCAA eligibility. To change those rules right in the middle of what they're trying to do in their efforts doesn't make sense. But then, as I just kind of pointed out, the lower schools want to see more of a trickle down effect. Find players that maybe would go to a top tier school, falling maybe to Atlantic hockey because the CHL players pushing them down in the economy of this sport. I get it. I get it on both sides. But I think that, Dave just throwing out kind of some round numbers and saying 40-20, okay, that doesn't take all 64 teams into account, but it's pretty darn close. And I wouldn't be surprised if we had to actually do a straw poll right now, if we found that it was probably about 2/3, 1/3 in favor of still not allowing CHL players in.
Although rumblings, I think both CCHA and Atlantic Hockey, there's a split in those leagues among coaches for and against as well. So, we haven't polled all 64, and I don't think we'd be able to get that answer. Maybe we'll see what happens in April in Naples. But we'll wrap it up there for this edition of USCHO Spotlight. This podcast has been sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Spotlight.